Welcome to Will's Personal Development Podcast, where we bring you data and science-backed answers and advice from billionaires. All right, welcome. So in this episode, we are going to be talking about how you can overcome information overwhelm. How do you deal with information overwhelm, information overload? We live in the era and age of complete overload of information thanks to the internet and the proliferation of books. You can literally go to the library or a bookstore and buy thousands of books, and there just seems to be articles, videos, podcasts on every single topic under the sun teaching you how to do it. And it just seems like you're just overwhelmed by information, and there's no way that you can have enough time to listen to this all. So I'm going to tell you a very quick story just to illustrate why this occurred. In the past, before the internet came about and the printing press came about, which all happened very recently when you look at the span of the entire human civilization, before those came about, all of these resources were very, very, very scarce. Only the richest people were privileged enough to be able to afford and have access to a book because they had to be hand copied. There was no, mass producing printing press that could produce thousands of books in an hour. So a book was very valuable knowledge, and therefore it was a prized possession. Unfortunately, thanks to information being so readily available, people have kind of taken it for granted, and also they've kind of been overwhelmed by it because there's a lot of people who have bad advice who are now able to just spam it, churn it out. And that's one of the problems you'll see everywhere. Blogs, websites, even books. You have people who just want to write articles, who just want to be the next social media star, or who want to, anything really. They want to be someone who writes a book and can say that they're an author. They churn out these subpar books or articles, and yet they get attention. And I'm sure if you're in the personal development field, you see it all the time. Thousands upon thousands of these articles are churned out every single day like a factory, and they suck. And they have titles like 5 Reasons Why Successful People Are Successful, or 5 Reasons Why Millionaires Succeed, or 10 Secrets of Successful Millionaires. And they all sound the same, and that's one of the problems. You look at the article and it's just horrible. There's 2 sentences per point, and there's no evidence backing up any of the points. So how do you get over this? And that's actually a good segue into my first tip, which is the first thing I do is delete. Delete. So let's say I stumble across 10 articles on success. 9 out of those 10 articles get deleted. And what I mean by that is I close the tab, I don't read it. And the reason is because the most expensive advice that you can get is bad advice, because it will cost you more time and money listening to the wrong advice. And because I've been in this space so long, it's out there so often. A lot of the articles or whatever medium you're following, videos, podcasts, whatever else, there's a lot of advice which is just unfounded. And I will be researching or reading billionaires, and I know what they actually say as advice. But then when you read these articles, it's the complete opposite of what they actually say. And one of the reasons, it's not the only reason, but one of the big reasons behind this is because most of the time, people are churning out articles for the sake of churning this out. It happens a lot on social media platforms like Instagram or YouTube. There's at least 100 success or inspiration or millionaire quotes types of accounts on Instagram with at least 100,000 followers. So it's a wide field and it's pretty saturated, but 90% of the quotes on there are simply churned out. And what I mean by that is they could be the exact opposite of what a successful person actually gives as advice, but they don't care. As long as they get views, engagement, followers, they don't really care. They just make up a quote that sounds good. So that it's very dangerous listening to that because it can point you in the wrong direction. And again, with YouTube, it happens as well. Sometimes they'll say, these are the top 10 tips of this billionaire. In reality, they just pulled out like 10 random tips. It's not actually their top 10. But that's the first point. I usually do a quick scan of the article, and if it does not provide credibility in the form of scientific studies, specific quotes, or references to specific billionaires or successful people who have said those, I delete the article. I don't read it. Now, the second tip I can give you is what I like to call just-in-time reading or just-in-time. There's a lot of terms for this. You hear it all the time in various niches, especially the entrepreneur niche. It's mainly called the just-in-time technique, and it's pretty straightforward. It's as it sounds. You only listen or read or consume advice to the specific burning pain that is most urgent to you. And I'm a huge culprit of not following this, and I'm definitely getting better at it. But just to give you an example, I would read articles on how to hire employees and all this stuff when I don't even have a business yet. And yes, it is very useful and important information, but chances are by the time I get to a point where I have a business where I am concerned with how the best way of hiring and firing employees, I would have forgotten whatever I read in the article, or at least 90% of it. So the time I wasted reading that is kind of pointless. I should be reading stuff on just the next step because that's what I need, which is, building a following, validating a product idea, and starting a business. Those are topics that are urgent and I need them now. So that's why it's called just in time, because you just pick the next thing that you need to get solved. And so another example would be dating advice. A lot of people make this mistake. They'll consume all this content on how to make a girl laugh on a date when they can't even get the date in the first place. So they should simply focus their time on the first step. And they waste a lot of time thinking, the more knowledge, the better. And they get overwhelmed by the information. They get paralyzed and they think that they'll become a master by doing this. And that's not really how it works. Think of the basketball or tennis player who is good at tennis. Do you think someone who simply sits in the library and reads all this theory on how to shoot a basketball or serve a tennis ball will become a master on theory alone? You actually have to go out and practice and calibrate because the real world is a bit different and it requires experiences and for you to gauge that feedback and really adjust to it. So that's my second tip. My third tip for information overwhelm or overload is I simply focus on what my biggest goals are. And sometimes this requires daily journaling and just thinking it over and asking yourself why over again to get to your core belief. So, for example, let's say you say your big goal is I want to make $1 million. But then you ask yourself why? Well, I want to make $1 billion because I want to travel. Well, why do you want to travel? Oh, I want to travel so that I can go to a place with more women. Well, why do you want to go to a place with more women? Because I want to meet more attractive girls and this town I'm in doesn't have it. And then you keep going on, for example, and then you end up finding that you want attractive girls, or you can go even further and say that you only want attractive girls because you think it will make you happy. And then when you get there, you could realize, what I really want is happiness. And from there, maybe I should just, take a shortcut, and rather than going the long way and trying to get $1 million, I can focus on happiness and figure out how can I get more happiness. And then you could turn to science, and you might find, which is actually true, is that science has shown that stuff that's materialistic like money or women, they often have only short-term effects on your happiness, and some of it is sustainable and will increase your happiness, but not as much as you think it will. So those are just examples of how you can kind of shortcut the process and find out what are your biggest goals. A lot of us have surprisingly very different goals in life. Some of us want to have a great family. Others just want to travel the world or visit a place before they die. Others want to prove someone wrong. Others want to be the number one champion at their sport, and so on and so forth. So figure out what your main goal is, because we oftentimes have numerous goals and we get pulled in all these directions. Find out what your main goal is, and just focus on those topics. So rather than consuming how-to topics on everything under the sun, from how to be more charismatic to how to be confident to how to dress better to how to pack on muscle, you're just stretched in too many directions and overwhelmed by trying to juggle too many things. And this is something I struggle with too. I'm not some god who's figured it out, but pick that one thing that really matters to you and focus on, getting better at that first. So hopefully this video helped. Hopefully this podcast helped. And thanks so much. And if you like this, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And I will see you in the next episode. Thanks so much. See you guys later. Thank you for listening to Will's Personal Development Podcast. You can find more at willyoulaugh.com.